Okay, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Old College Try, the podcast. On today's episode, myself, your host, Matt Carpenter, and co-host Peggy Keough, we're going to talk specifically to divorced and separated families, split household families. What are the do's, what are the don'ts? How do colleges define the difference between divorced and separated? Who should submit the FAFSA? What about CSS Profile schools? How does it work there? How do colleges audit this? How do they know what we are actually presenting to them? Do all colleges treat it the same? And what if we have kind of a unique situation in a bad way? What if we have an ex where we don't know where they are? We have no way to get them to cooperate here. What is our best practice? So all things divorced, separated families, and even if we're not divorced, should we get divorced? Thanks for tuning in.
I can't keep up with you, and I didn't come this far.
Okay, Peggy, early Halloween.
Yep, almost Halloween. I'm having a little shindig on Friday night. So.
Same, girlfriend. This is we do it proper. We live in the Halloween capital of the world here, right?
Yeah, that's true. I always forget that you're so close to Salem.
Leads right into the whole North Shore, and that's a beautiful thing. One of my, honestly, definitely top three holidays. Top three holidays. Number three. Yep, number three for me, Peggy. Stuff. It's a big deal. Are you dressing up?
We said to people they didn't have to because, we're so new here. We didn't want to be like, oh, you have to wear a costume. So I don't know if I am or not.
I was going to say, I'm asking about you specific. Peggy,
it'll be a game time decision, so we'll see.
You set the tone as the host. You set the tone, and you need. I'm requiring a costume.
What are you doing?
We have a couple of things that we're going back and forth with. We might be like he's après ski type outfit. There was some talk of Popeye and olive oil with me being olive oil because I have very skinny legs. And
yes, that works.
That works, right? And it is the most cutting nickname I've ever been called. My mean friend Derek Mazza from college called me olive oil, and it's always cut to the core. So I might lean into it. I might lean into it. So we'll see. So no definitive answers, TBD. But Peggy, before we get into the task at hand, we have to follow with our new tradition here. Give us a tune. Give us a new tune, old tune, a tune for the audience.
It's not a new tune, but this kind of felt. I love this album in general. The Dixie Chicks. Now I think they call themselves the Chicks. But this is an older album called Wide Open Spaces, and it's just kind of one of my. If I need energy, or it's just like a psych up song for me. But I think the words are appropriate for this kind of. It's about somebody going away, and it's just a great song. So I'll. And if you're not a country person, don't immediately have an objection in your head. This isn't like, I do like country. Some country's great. But it's country-ish. But let me just, I'll just play a few seconds of it here.
What's the name of the song, Peggy?
It's called Wide Open Spaces.
All Wide Open Spaces. I know that was the album.
So it's all about somebody going away and making mistakes and taking a chance. And, not that college is literally that, because it's maybe half of that, but just made me think of it. And it's just my pump up song. I love that song when I need energy. Or every time we used to stay in our deck in our old house in Washington, I would play that whole album. Bill's like, where's the Dixie Chicks?
Get it going. Fire up the Dixie Chicks. All right, Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks. Go do your homework, people. In addition to what you're about to learn here, now we are talking about specifically divorced, separated, one household families today, right? That's what we want to educate you on. But guess what? Even if you don't fit into this category anywhere, you might decide to get divorced after listening to this episode, right? There could be some financial aid opportunities here.
Oh, well, I'm sure, Matt, I've had people, and I'm sure you have through the years, that are like, should we just live in separate places? And, some of these people are joking, but some of these people were really serious, and I was like, no, I am not advocating for that.
Yeah. Everybody makes the joke. Oftentimes when we give this part of the presentation live, we'll get the version of me in the back of the room that wants to, make a joke and say, oh, so I get it. We should just get divorced, right? But to your point, I've had people be dead serious and say, what do you think, right? And to your point, Becky, no, we're not going to get divorced or separated or whatever to get more financial aid. But if that is our scenario, that's what we want to talk about. So let's just start, Peggy, because in this financial aid world, they kind of have their own, I guess, definition of what it means to be, we'll call it a split household family. So just like coach us up on how colleges look at this.
Yeah, so the two terms, divorced and separated, that we throw around, like you're considered separated in the financial aid world if you're in separate households. Not the basement, which I've had families, that doesn't work, but separate households. So it doesn't have to be some official separation agreement, all this kind of stuff. So that's a good thing, because a lot of times people haven't done that. Maybe they're going to get back together in a year or whatever. But they are separated. They're having whatever differences they're having. So that's all it is, and that's why we say two households sometimes. You literally have two households. Same thing for divorce. You don't have to have signed the line and the whole bit to say, hey, we're divorced. So that's a nice thing about financial aid, that it doesn't have to be super official. And people, I've never been divorced, but I know it can be a very long process that you have limited control of how quickly it happens. So yeah, so that's basically two households is the key thing to remember.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on it. The timing doesn't matter. So it really can be one of these things like we just separated last week, last month, 6 months ago, last summer, right? They don't see a distinction between that and, you've been formally divorced for 10 years, right? There is no kind of, again, in very rare cases, so rare that I hesitate to even share it. I've had some colleges say, hey, can we see some documentation? Again, these were so one-off, but it's very rare, right? That happens because, again, most colleges say you don't have to be formally separated. Again, this doesn't have to be formal. Two different households, that's kind of good enough for us.
Well, yeah, on the CSS profile, they ask what was the year of separation. They ask the year of divorce, but it's not required because you might not be divorced, So that's really what they ask on that one financial aid form. And on the FAFSA, they don't even ask. It's just whatever your status is, you put that.
So, and on that note, Peggy, so we're in one of these situations. Let's just say hypothetically, we've been separated for 6 months, two different households. Which household, who completes the FAFSA, right? Which parent or do both parents complete the FAFSA? Why don't you just coach us through that?
Yeah, this is why we were joking before, Matt and I, about, maybe we should get divorced, because on the FAFSA, only one of the biological parents is involved in any way, shape, or form, and that's the custodial parent. And the definition has changed, and custodial tends to make people think that's where the child spends their time, and it's not that anymore. It's literally the parent who provides the most financial support on a year look back from when you're submitting forms. So if you have a sophomore, junior in college and high school, you've got a lot of this is a huge planning opportunity, because so many families nowadays, I'm sure you have this too, Matt, that they're like, well, we're kind of almost 50-50. Well, you don't need to be 50-50. The government, the way that Congress did it, they said, well, if you're even Steven, then it's whoever makes more. Well, it should never be even Steven in my mind. Just make it not even Steven by $1, and you're following the rules, put your best foot forward. So and literally that other biological parent, it seems weird, but they are completely not involved. If they have a giant 529 that they own, the non-custodial parent in this definition, that's not even part of this. It won't affect the student at all. So there are some massive planning opportunities. So that's when we help people, the earlier, like I've even worked with people through the years, I'm sure you have too, Matt, where they're separating and they're like, how do we do this in the best way that's going to help us down the road, if they're forward thinking? And then we can help them. If you've got a crummy situation, you might as well make lemonade out of lemons and at least set it up in a way that's more beneficial down the road. But it's weird to people that dad or mom is just not involved from doing forms, their finances, but that's the way it is on the FAFSA.
As if they don't exist, right? And
Exactly.
Colleges that only require the FAFSA, it's as if that other household does not exist, and for better or for worse, fairly or unfairly, that's how the student is packaged from a financial aid standpoint. Again, very surprising to some people. I don't blame them for being surprised, but that is the deal. I want to emphasize a couple things here. And number one, let's talk about what doesn't matter in terms of who completes the FAFSA that I think, again, is just confusing to people. It doesn't matter who claims the student as an exemption on tax returns. Has nothing to do with who should complete the FAFSA. Doesn't matter who the student lives with, right? Whether it's part-time, all the time, none of the time, that is not a variable that's considered at all. So again, I just like to get ahead of that because, again, most people, I think, could just assume it's one or two or kind of a combination of those things that would dictate who completes the FAFSA. Completely irrelevant, both of those things. The thing I want to talk about that I think makes it confusing, especially with this prior tax year rule, right? So if we use class 2026 family as an example, I got this question last night. Peggy, we get this question all the time. Okay, they're looking at my 2024 tax returns, right? Prior tax year. We were married filing jointly in 2024. Since then, we are going through a separation, going through a divorce, maybe the ink's dry, doesn't matter. But now we are separated, okay? And or divorced, okay? How do we complete the FAFSA? How do we complete the CSS profile? And this is kind of a wonky one, okay? Because what you're going to do is whoever the custodial parent is, so that means whoever is providing the most financial support to the student, that's who completes the FAFSA. That's who completes kind of this primary CSS profile. But they're going to manually break apart, quote unquote, break apart their income and assets and just have the parent complete or provide their income on the FAFSA, their assets on the FAFSA. So it's very strange. It will not align with their 2024 tax returns. But what trumps that is their current marital status, right? And that's how they want to complete these forms. Now, that's the correct advice, but I also like to set the expectations for these families that you can all but guarantee that you will be audited or verified, is the word we use in college, by these colleges. It'll kind of naturally trigger the system to say, hey, your tax returns don't align with what you put on the FAFSA, with what you put on the CSS profile. Tell us what's going on here, right? So again, and it's very natural and it's very normal. You didn't do anything wrong. I just kind of set the precedent that it might be a little bit of a clunkier process, for you if in fact you've had this change since your base income year of 2024, but that is the correct way to handle it.
Yeah, and you might, if you understand the FAFSA at all, you might be thinking, but hey, I read that you can't manually enter stuff. It automatically comes over from the IRS. You're 100% right, but there's a few situations that are exception situations, and what Matt just described, that's the number one, in my experience, exception. Your filing status, your marital status is different than your prior year, and if it's working, knock on wood, it should kick out, not move your data from your tax return. It's not going to move that married filing jointly return over and tax information. As he said, you're going to manually enter it. I would suggest too, I suggest this to all my families, but especially here, get a tax transcript because you are going to probably be verified, like Matt said. That's just a mini official version of your return, because when you break it out, one, it might help you break it out, but two, if they reach out, you might be able to just send that instead of your whole tax return with all the schedules. But the college, again, you didn't do anything wrong, but they have to check basically. And it gets a little tricky when you're splitting assets and everything, so some people need support around that, but you definitely want to be putting the custodial parents' info in there, not both, and that's why you fall under the exception.
Yeah, and exactly right. Now let's talk about another, I think, confusing variable that's not necessarily intuitive. So I'm a parent that fits somewhere in one of these buckets here. I'm the custodial parent because I provide the most financial support to my student. I'm also remarried, so I'm divorced and I'm remarried, and maybe this all happened very quickly, right? I just got remarried, again, last year, right? Talk to me about that, Peggy. How does that work?
Yeah, if you're remarried, then that new spouse is part of your household. And it doesn't matter. This is super common. Well, he or she has their own kids and they're not putting a penny toward my child. Doesn't matter. We have a prenup. Doesn't matter. No, this is just another one of these financial aid things for the FAFSA. If you're remarried, that's your household. And that actually should be in your planning thoughts when you're figuring out, hey, who should give that extra buck that I was talking about. It could be the biological parent that didn't remarry, right? Because then the assets, the income are lower. So these are all things to understand if you can plan this, and you have an amicable relationship. But yeah, remarrying, it's a bit of a kiss of death on this one, right? It dooms you, right?
Well, let me bust in here and further confuse everybody, okay, as it pertains to remarried folks specifically. Now, FAFSA-only schools. So another way of saying that is federal methodology schools. These schools that only require the FAFSA, 100% right. Just like Peggy said, that new step parent is considered like a biological parent, right? And even if that person has not contributed anything, the formula does not care. The college does not care. However, institutional methodology schools, which means most of the colleges that require the CSS profile, okay, they are not supposed to, I will reiterate this word, they are not supposed to consider step parent income and assets. Why did I emphasize supposed to so much? We see them do this all the time. Okay, whether it's by accident, on purpose, doesn't matter. So if you are a parent that's applying to these schools that and you are remarried, whether it's both biological parents, one biological parent, they should not be including step parent income and assets. But oftentimes when we see that it benefits them being the college institution, they will. So this is one of the most common places where we will have these wildly successful appeals, and all of a sudden when we challenge them to say, you were not supposed to count the step parent income and assets, and they say, mea culpa, here's another $70,000, $65,000, $72,000. Those are real numbers that we've had with successful appeals when we've, quote unquote, caught these colleges not doing what they're supposed to be doing at institutional methodology schools. I do want to make sure that I share that. Now, that's also a perfect opportunity to kind of pump up our software here, Peggy. Didn't plan it, but if you are a parent and some of this stuff is like resonating and this applies to you and you're like, well, how the hell am I supposed to know what college does what and who's institutional versus federal? Set up an account with us, guys. collegeaidpro.com, mycap.collegeaidpro.com. We've done the homework for you. It's all baked into the algorithm, right? We're going to tell you who requires what and doesn't and blah, blah, blah. So,
well,
sorry.
And that made a transition through a topic. But up until this point, until he just shared, we were talking exclusively FAFSA. So now if we say, because we don't want to confuse you, now we say, okay, now we're talking about schools that require the FAFSA and the second form called the CSS Profile. So that's what Matt's talking about. They're actually going to see both parents. So there is a custodial parent for the CSS when you're divorced or separated, and that's going to match whatever you decided, whoever that was for the FAFSA, and that custodial parent with the student is going to submit the CSS profile. Non-custodial parent is not off the grid like they are in the FAFSA. They look at both by most schools, not all of them, and we have that baked into our software too. But the lion's share of them look at both both biological parents. So there's another form called the non-custodial profile. Similar form, but it focuses on that second biological parent and asks about all their finances. Both of the forms go to College Board, which is who administers it. And most colleges will look at both. So what Matt's saying is you have two parents that got remarried. A lot of times they'll be like, wow, if they're all working, there's 4 sets of assets and 4 incomes, right? And technically, if you look at the nitty gritty, like we do at CAP of the institutional methodology, which is basically what the CSS profile schools use, they're supposed to be looking at the 2 biological parents. So it's different than the FAFSA because it's only 1 biological parent, like we said, but it really shouldn't be 4 working people. And that's something that we appeal on all the time, and we back into it, and we know most families just have no idea, and they get a package and it's like, wow, okay, we got nothing, that kind of thing. So that's just something to keep in mind, but completely different ways of looking at divorced and separated families. And that's a planning opportunity because for some families, it makes a lot of sense to focus on the FAFSA-only schools, but not always. Like, it's not that, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but if you have multiple kids in school, The CSS profile schools will take that into account. So the takeaway here is not, we're divorced or separated, only focus on FAFSA schools. Not at all, because a lot of the CSS schools are better at meeting need, a lot of mostly privates, they have merit. There's just a lot of moving pieces here, and they could reduce what they think you're going to pay, what they think you can afford, by 30 to 40% if you have a junior and a senior in high school. Whereas that FAFSA school that's only going to look at one parent is going to say, oh, you have two in school? Who cares, right? You still are expected to pay the same thing. So that's another conversation, but it's just something I just don't want people to hear or be logical to hear it and say, okay, well, FAFSA school's for us, and that's not necessarily the case.
It's a really important point. Really important point. And again, obviously, two drastically different ways that FAFSA versus FAFSA plus CSS schools do things. And again, it's not like every CSS school operates that way, right? We talk a lot about, University of Chicago does not look at the non-custodial parent in two household families. Neither does Vanderbilt, right? Even though Vanderbilt's a CSS profile school. Neither does Santa Clara, right? Out in the Bay Area type of deal. So again, we probably say it once a week, right? Every college is different. They each operate their businesses differently. But Peggy, probably some people are hearing this going, oh my goodness, we are applying to some of these CSS profile schools that require the non-custodial profile, and I don't know where they are, or they haven't been involved in our lives for whatever, or, we've done this for a long enough time and worked with so many different family dynamics, and some of them are not good, right? And some of them are there's a restraining order, or somebody's incarcerated. If we're somewhere in one of those situations, and of course that's many, many more, and this is not an exact science, but what do we tell those parents?
Yeah, so it's nice. The CSS College Board kind of thought of this, because this does come up many times every year with all of our families, unfortunately. And the non-custodial parent is off the grid. It's not safe for the student, the child to interact with that parent. And so there's something called a non-custodial waiver. And it's literally a form that the student fills out, parents can put stuff in, and it's basically reaching out to these colleges and saying, hey, this is why I want you to waive the requirement for the other biological parent to submit the form. Now, I will say, I just got an email yesterday, if it's, my ex is just a big fat jerk and he knows we're not eligible and he won't submit it, that's not going to work, right? They're not going to waive it, and if you don't have both parents, you don't have a complete financial aid packet, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, and they can't award aid. So it's hugely punitive if one parent does that. Unfortunately, we have these situations because we work with so many families at CAP where, I had a child once who literally had to have her therapist help her and be there with her as she was doing the waiver because it was so hard for her to do. So this is somebody who definitely will get the waiver, right? Because unfortunately, the relationship with dad was just really not great. So keep that in mind, because I know people hear this and they're immediately the adrenaline's going oh, we're screwed because there's no way. I've had parents in jail. I've had parents that are, I had a dad once, a Britney Spears thing before she got control of her money. somebody else had control of dad's money because of this, that. A lot of stories, So what are you going to do? But again, try and make lemonade out of lemons and realize that waiver is definitely there.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant process. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as just emailing a school or calling a school and say, hey, the other parent's not involved or they're not willing to comply, and they just say, got it, message received. Just send us yours, right? They make you air your dirty laundry, right? You're going to have to give a parent explanation in writing and sign it. The student's going to have to give their perspective and share that and sign it. And more often than not, they want a third party. So it's a school counselor or somebody, a clergy, a rabbi, So it's
therapist. I've had therapists, right? It's hugely helpful. And unfortunately, some people try and pull fast ones. So that's part of it is that, and there's just bad apples out there, whatever. Not the lion's share of people, but they just have to make sure, hey, this really is a legit situation, and so that's part of that third party confirmation.
So to Peggy's point, it's not a fun process, right? But it's kind of something that we just have to do with the upside being that once we do kind of go through this formality with each of the colleges, they say, got it, we understand, we're gonna package you as if that other parent does not exist, right? As if we were a FAFSA-only school type of deal, right? So that's where there's some legitimate upside there. Now, Peggy, what if situations change from one year to the next? We see this, right? It used to be the custodial rule, wherever the kid lived with the most, but maybe it's a scenario where whoever provides the most financial support to the student varies from one year to the next. Are we locked in? Whatever situation we present for freshman year, is that the deal for all four? How do colleges treat that?
On the FAFSA only schools or CSS, because things change, life changes. Honestly, we might meet a family that didn't understand that they could have changed a few things, and they're being honest and they're saying this person's a custodial, but then once they know, they make some adjustments so they can put a better foot forward for their sophomore year package, and they make a change. So that's nice. It's not locked in. It shouldn't be, because life is just all you can count on is change, right? And so that's another thing that should relieve stress. If anybody's listening to us like, oh, great, I already submitted my forms, this is too late. Yeah, it's too late for this year, but remember, it's that year look back. It's not a calendar year, so you have plenty of time. If you have a senior and you decided one thing, the key is being able to work together with your ex. And I've had couples that are just lovely. I mean, I feel like they're nicer to each other than I am to my own husband sometimes in the divorce, right? But, so you have to just, your situation as a divorced person or separated, but if you can get to where you focus on what's the best for our child, and haven't been through this, so I don't want to give advice and act like I'm holier than thou, but if you can do that, it's huge. It's huge, because there could be some massive differences in how much money you could get from a college if you can put your best foot forward.
Well, Peggy, the only thing I'll challenge you on there is it may not even necessarily be too late for this year. Okay, now obviously if we're already in college and we've already submitted everything, the colleges can certainly decide, and in many cases do say it is too late. But I have seen even this late in the game, especially someone said, well, we were separated, okay, after we were in fact separated when we completed our financial aid applications, but we filed jointly in 2024 and 23, for example, and we just made that mistake, right? We just figured it wouldn't count until next year. Those are the cases when I've had colleges say, you got to prove it, you got to show me something
to a lease agreement for the if exactly. You messed up like that, I just mean if the first year it's hands down this person, and you can change the way you support the child so that it can be the next person. But if there's anything like that where you're like, we just didn't know. There's a lot to know in this process, and we get it. We do this all day, so it's just second nature to us. But there's a lot. There's a lot of nuances, and don't beat yourself up. It's super easy to miss them or read something wrong on the internet and follow that advice. There's just, it's hard. It's hard,
yep.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, we can very rarely is it too late, especially if we were like, wow, we made a
if it's legit, you just kind of fall on your sword and say, hey, and what documentation can we provide to you? Yep. Most times colleges we have our stories of when colleges are being you-know-whats, but most of the time, they're going to
things like this, they're more likely to work with you than not, I think is our general experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Last thing here I'll say, and again, we get this question all the time, how do colleges know? What's the audit verification process look like? How do colleges know? How would you answer that, Peggy?
Ultimately, we got that question too, and it was, where did the child sleep more? And the family lives in the same town. It's like, they ultimately don't necessarily know. I mean, they can always ask questions, like if there's a mom or a dad that makes $30,000 and the other one makes $500,000, and they're saying, oh yes, I'm supporting my family of 3 and I'm paying more. They can always reach out if they see red flags to say, are you sure this is accurate? But ultimately, like you said, it doesn't matter who claims the child on the taxes. Ultimately, it is a bit of the honor system. With the support one, they can dig in more than where were they sleeping, because how can they ever verify that, if you live, unless somebody lives in another state and you're saying it. I mean, I'm just, be honest. That's one of my commandments on the financial aid forms, but leverage your planning opportunities for sure.
Yeah, and I think Again, this rule is relatively new, which means it's also relatively new to the colleges. I've talked to a fair amount of colleges asking this question specifically, among others. The most common answer is we have no clue how to verify, how we would even verify, and therefore we really can't. And so families are on their own with how they choose to kind of do this, right?
But I would say it's not as clear cut as who makes more, or
exactly.
She's paying all this child support to me. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of different ways to get in the weeds and look at this.
Yep.
That it can be potentially the parent that's more advantageous purely for financial aid.
Yeah, so again, we'll repeat. Colleges can do whatever the hell they want, okay, and they will, and at the end of the day, it's up to them to decide how they want to run things and what questions they want to ask, and it's their professional judgment, not us as consumers. But again, the long and the short of it now is that colleges don't freaking know, and they really don't verify because there's so few ways to verify is the main theme. And of course, there can be exceptions.
Unless some glaring red flag is in front of them, which is not that common. Yeah, they're just gonna go with it.
Yep. But to your point, Peggy, again, we don't coach families to don't get divorced, right? Because we want more financial aid. Don't get cute with how you do this thing, because then those are the people that are ruining it for the families that really are going through a bad situation.
I will share, if you are having problems in your marriage and your solution is somebody's in the basement, that's a hard one. Not for the CSS, but for the FAFSA, because if you're following the rules, you're still married. So I've had a few of those where I'm like, I'm not telling you to move out. I'm not a marriage counselor, but if you truly are having problems, some people, that's how they kind of deal with it, probably because housing is expensive and all that kind of stuff. But that can be, so it might be worth looking at, well, how would this affect college? And maybe it is worth, being in a apartment or something. So just keep that in mind. But we are not marriage counselors. So
I was going to say, maybe we should reverse course and do get divorced, actually. Never mind what we said earlier. So this is the push you needed, everybody. So we're happy to be a part of it in a small way. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful for people, right? Yet another variable that can make an already confusing situation even more confusing. Listen to the Dixie Chicks, listen to Wide Open Spaces, and of course, listen to Future Birds. Peggy, anything else for you?
Nope, just happy Halloween, everybody. Have fun if you have little ones. So, mine are old now, but I remember those days. You still have Emma. She's probably super pumped.
I'm at the finish line, but she's juiced, man. She's 10, so we're still we're still in prime time. So we're fortunate. We're going to enjoy it. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody have a great Halloween.
Okay, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Old College Try. Hopefully you learned a lot about divorced and separated families and what you should be doing in this process. I'm your host, Matt Carpenter. I was joined by Peggy Keough. As always, this has been edited and produced by Eileen Campbell. Listen to the Dixie Chicks, Wide Open Spaces, and as always, listen to the Future Birds. Like us, follow us. We'll see you next week.
I used to get